Are Russians still using their troll armies to influence public opinion in Europe? Is their effect substantial? How does this work in different countries? How can we identify coordinated non-authentic behavior on social networks? You're listening to the Explain Ukraine podcast. Explain Ukraine is a podcast by UkraineWorld, a multilingual media about Ukraine. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I am a Ukrainian philosopher, chief editor of UkraineWorld and president of PAN Ukraine. In this episode, I speak to Robert van der Noordaa, a Dutch journalist and analyst, and the founder of the TrollRenix, an initiative aimed to uncover disinformation campaigns on social media. We discuss a recent study published by Robert and his team. Before we start, let me remind you that UkraineWorld is brought to you by Internews Ukraine, one of Ukraine's largest media NGOs. You can support our work at patreon.com/UkraineWorld. We provide exclusive content for our patrons. You can also support our volunteer trips to the front lines at PayPal, ukraine.resisting@gmail.com. You can find these links in the description of this episode. Robert van der Noordaa, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you very much.
So I know you, I've known you for quite a long time, before the full-scale invasion, and we were talking so much about the Russian trolls and Russian troll factories. And you launched a company which is called TrollRenix, and the slogan is uncovering disinformation campaigns on social media. And the thing why we decided to talk today is that you published a report, which is a very interesting report, precisely about the recent EU elections. And it's called The Influence Game: How Disinformation Networks Target EU Elections. First, let me ask you, what is your core target? What are you trying to uncover? Because what I see from your report is not only, let's say, trolls or inauthentic behavior, but what is the key thing about what you're doing? You're trying to uncover the networks of them.
Exactly. So we do a variety of projects. In some cases, we only analyze big data related to certain propaganda narratives. But this software, the company was specifically started to locate like large disinformation networks, what some people call troll farms on social media. And I think that's quite unique because it's quite difficult to really find those networks. But it took us 11 years to be where we are now, basically, and we help a lot of government agencies, sometimes media companies, to find inauthentic behavior on social media. So we don't really interfere with what real users, what real people are doing on social media platforms.
So imagine you find an account and you are saying to yourself, let's talk about the former Twitter X that you study so much. You find an account. What makes you think that this is an inauthentic account, that it is doing an inauthentic behavior, meaning that it doesn't represent the real person with his or her real views and opinions?
There are a lot of different ways to determine whether this account is part of a larger network. To give you some example, for instance, there's another hoax on social media. It doesn't matter what platform it is. It can be Facebook, it can be VKontakte, or it can be Twitter, or even YouTube or TikTok. There are certain accounts, for instance, saying like, I don't know, Zelensky bought some expensive house in Italy, or he bought a Bugatti. These things you see quite a lot. If it's one account, it can be propaganda, but you don't know, of course, whether it's a network. But suppose that we collect 100,000 posts on X or 100,000 posts on Instagram or TikTok, and we can determine, for instance, that a lot of these accounts were created for sometimes even in a day or in a couple of days. We have done investigations with hundreds of accounts where all accounts were created in just like 2-3 days. And we can even determine how many people are creating those accounts. So there are some creators of these networks that take like 4 minutes to create a new account, and then 4 minutes later another account, and then at some point, if you have a large group of these accounts, you can even see that they go for lunch, or that they have a break having dinner. There are probably about 23 different of those aspects that you can analyze. If all, for instance, accounts are located in a completely other time zone, and we do analyze time zones, we've analyzed the propaganda campaigns, for instance, where it turned out that all accounts were located in China, Shanghai time zone, and started at 9 in the morning Shanghai time. That then it's pretty clear that we are dealing with a network. But there are many of those examples that you can use to determine whether this is really a troll farm, a network of accounts.
So what you're trying to uncover is that, okay, we can say whatever we want on social media. We can, as physical persons, spread disinformation because we believe in this. This is our right to believe these things that are probably not true. But what is problematic is that there is a network of multiple accounts governed by, let's say, one person from one center, and they're created not to share opinions or not to communicate on social media, but to spread, let's say, certain narratives and spread it and multiply it. Is that what you're trying to do?
Correct, and it can be extremely large. So, for instance, when we looked at French elections, we didn't map the entire network, but it could be as big as several 100,000 accounts. So it can be really, really large. So these people can really influence a population. It's huge. They can make things trending. They can influence discussions, attack certain politicians, massively spread, for instance, anti-vaccination narratives. So it can be seriously dangerous even to people's health by spreading this info about vaccination, for instance. It's more than just propaganda.
And your current report, is about EU elections. What have you found?
We started with Germany, and was interesting. What we do. It's pretty simple. So we take certain. We look often at previous elections, so like 4 years ago, and we look at certain hashtags. We look at certain words in that particular language. I mean, there is no physical boundary to a social media platform, but if we keep it, um, if we, for instance, only analyzed posts on X or any other platform in German, then you can still keep a sort of geographical focus. And was interesting because there was a new employee who had started, and I explained him what I explained to you a couple of minutes ago, how you can determine whether this is really inauthentic behavior. And I explained it to him, and he started looking at the data, and he said, "I think I found something." I thought, like, of course, you just started like 1 minute ago, and what he found was accounts that were created very recently, a lot of them, but they had thousands and thousands of followers, but some of them didn't have any, almost no posts whatsoever, and whatever content they were spreading was like not interesting at all. So that made no sense that these accounts had so many of these followers. And for Germany, yeah, it took us like, I don't know, couple of hours, and we had like 15,000 of those German accounts. But it's quite, it's not very difficult, but it's quite time consuming to establish all accounts within such a network. You can technically do it, but it depends a bit on how large the network is. But it could take you days or weeks. So the goal in itself is not to map every account in the network. It's more like, let's find that there is a disinfo network. Let's see how it works. Let's prove 100% that it is a network and not real people. The accounts from real people. And the next step is, how much impact is there? And in Germany, that was quite extreme what we found.
So the networks you analyzed that were influencing EU elections in Germany, what they were trying to do? What was the key feature of their behavior?
They for related to EU elections, they were mainly promoting the German political party AfD, and
Which is Alternative für
Deutschland,
Deutschland, which is a far right German party.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is quite pro-Russian also. And the interesting thing is, well, I'm sure there are a lot of real people that like this AfD, but these accounts were like extremely pro-Russian, and they were even using Russian flags in their bios and spreading massive amounts of Russian disinfo, anti-vaccination narratives. And I've seen real AfD accounts and people who like AfD, but not like this. So it from the moment that we saw this, it looked very Russian and extremely pro-Russian, which made it really weird compared to real AfD fans. But it was massive, and that was just the first country that we started investigating. The next one was France, and that was even a lot worse. This network was, I don't know, a lot larger than this German one, which was already really big. And then we looked at Italy. We also found such a network, but the activity around EU elections was quite minimal. They were more focused on immigration and anti-vaccination than EU elections, strangely enough. But because some of them did interfere or try to influence EU election, we did find the network.
And how can we prove that this network is actually administered by the Russians? Because and can we prove that? Because well, there can be accounts that are showing their pro-Russian sympathy. Are there any other elements? Can we see, for example, that they're working according to the Russian time, or they have been linked to a certain place in Russia? How can you do it?
There are several ways that you can do this. The best thing would be if I would at some point, although it's nowadays more difficult, but if you would have the IP addresses, but only the social media platform can see those IP addresses, and I can't, so that doesn't help me at all. But we did establish that some of the accounts were located likely in Russian time zone. Some of them were in Moscow times, but also we found accounts that were either more east than Moscow, or located in another country which is more east than Europe. Strangely enough, what intelligence agencies of certain countries can do, they can of course. I mean, if we make death threats towards somebody on a politician, for instance, on a social media platform, that is illegal. You break the platform rules and they can find you. So the moment that somebody goes to police saying like, hey, this guy threatens my life or whatever, the police or security agency of that country can call to this, can contact the social media platform, and they should be able to arrest this guy. But that is outside of my scope. So I just find a network, I write the report, I show how they work, that it's I prove that it's really a network, I show what impact it has, and now it can. Yeah, there's hopefully some government agencies will take action now. The other thing is we also found accounts that were previously um, they switched languages. So if you looked at the, especially for some older accounts, there were accounts that were posting in Russian language and then they switched to French or German language to hide. I mean, if you have a Russian network and you have Russian looking accounts with a Russian flag and your location is Moscow, it's too obvious if you start meddling or trying to influence, for instance, German elections. So if you want to influence German or French elections, for instance, you want these accounts to look German or French or Italian or Dutch or whatever you want. And these accounts indeed look extremely French with like location Paris and some French pictures and French language. They use French language or German language. But then if you look at older tweets, it might have been even repurposed accounts. They were tweeting before in Russian.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So they have been used in for different purposes in different times.
Yeah.
How old are these networks of accounts? How they just created? Because you're mentioning the old accounts. Does it mean that these are old networks which are reactivated for any particular purpose, like EU elections, or they're new accounts or new or minor networks which are created precisely for EU elections?
It's a mixture. That means that we found accounts that have been attacking certain politicians from EU or other countries already from 2011. So accounts created in 2011. What we also noticed is that a lot of these accounts existed before under more or less the same name, but they were deleted because they broke the platform rules. But then they recreated their account with a sort of similar name or similar handle and the same name. And if you collect all posts from that account, we found a lot of these accounts that said, account was suspended before. This is my new account. Please follow me again. And then other accounts in this info network start reposting that to build up the follower and following network of this person again. So some of it is very old, but because a lot of them are probably deleted by the social media platform, they need to keep creating new accounts. And especially for Germany and France, a lot of these accounts new accounts were created in the last year or so. So they apparently were preparing to like influence the elections, the EU elections, because they started making a lot of new accounts. So it's a mixture, everything between 2011 and now, which is interesting because I noticed a lot of these trolls. That is the whole reason why I started doing this. I noticed a lot of these trolls becoming active in 2013, but some of these accounts were older than this. And of course, the Russian war in Ukraine started um, in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. But some of these trolls are even a couple of years older than this. So I think it's quite telling what this means about Russia. I mean, why would a normal country create such accounts to attack EU or spread anti-vaccination narratives? I mean, that's not your really friendly neighbor, I would say.
Yeah, this is true. What about the networks themselves, the platforms themselves? Because I remember Twitter when it was still Twitter and not purchased by Elon Musk. It had some actions into massively deleting the accounts with inauthentic behavior. I think they were talking about millions and millions of accounts that they have deleted at some point. Uh, do you see any policy in this direction now, or you rather see complete let go policy of the new administration of Twitter X?
Almost completely that they don't care. What I find very disturbing is the fact that someone or some government agency or a group of people can create hundreds of thousands of accounts, at least on X, that is being done um, without them seeing it, or if they see it, they don't act, which is really weird. Um, we looked years ago, by the way, at the method how they like detect like fake accounts or networks, but that method was really flawed. So I would never use it like this. I mean, if you're the owner of this platform, you should be able to see that there is some sort of huge peak in creation of accounts. I think if that would be something you monitor, they should be able to see what is happening, and they could do it probably better than what I can do now. So moderation and checking these kinds of things is almost gone, and you see that people reporting accounts that really broke the rules, like very racist, anti-Semitic, anti-Ukrainian, hate speech kind of stuff, death threats, you name it. And a lot of these things are not moderated anymore. So didn't get a lot better. What Elon Musk calls free speech, I would say it means like everybody can say whatever they want, whether it's hatred or lies or whatever. It's quite terrible.
You were telling a little bit at the beginning about, the narratives that are spread by these groups. Is it only about, supporting far right parties? I assume that in France it's mostly about Rassemblement National, in Germany about Alternative für Deutschland.
Mhm.
Is there any other, narratives? What they're saying about Ukraine, for example? What they're saying about Russian invasion of Ukraine?
I was very surprised by one particular thing. We worked not so long ago for Council of Europe on a project, and the project for Council of Europe was to analyze hate speech narratives, Russian speech narratives aimed at Ukraine or Ukrainians. So there were narratives like Ukrainians are Nazis, Zelensky is a war criminal. Uh, Holodomor is some sort of fake story, etc. We had a lot of those narratives, and the crazy thing was that our software, the moment that we do a new investigation, but we still have old investigations in our system, and then the software reports that, hey, look, the accounts in this investigation are also present in other investigations. And it turned out that tens of thousands of these troll accounts were active in almost all hate, no, not almost all hate speech narratives investigations. So we collected, I think, 1.5 million posts on X. It was an investigation on accounts calling Ukrainians Nazis, and we started on the 1st of January, before the restart of the war in 2022. So we started from January 1st, 2022. And the reason why we started 2 months before the war was we wanted to see what the activity around this narrative was in the months before this war. And there was almost no, it was like maximum a couple of hundred tweets or a few dozen posts per day, that's of accounts that called Ukrainians Nazis. But then when the war started, it peaked to thousands and thousands. It's quite impressive to see this graph even. But it turned out that a lot of these accounts uh, were were from the same network. So that these were the German or the French or Italian accounts that were used at that time.
What about China? Have you tracked also the Chinese backed, Chinese sponsored inauthentic behaviors and networks of trolls?
Yes, we did a project for NATO. We were working on this beginning of 2022. So basically the moment when the war started, we done probably 70% of the work was finished just before the day the war started. And the aim of the project was to determine whether there were troll farms, disinformation networks that were targeting not Ukraine but Lithuania. And the interesting thing was that we noticed that there were huge numbers of accounts attacking Lithuanian politicians on X. And the other weird thing, and that was even before the war, was that these accounts were also sharing a lot of Russian type of disinfo. So again, like stuff like Ukrainians are Nazis, but also NATO is the problem. It's not Russia, but it's all NATO's fault. This kind of stuff. And when we analyzed the network doing this, it turned out to be Chinese. So these, and there were real people behind it. This is not a bot farm. By the way, also for the networks in Germany, France, and Italy, there are real people behind it. And even if you have one person has maybe 20 accounts or 30, that means that there are enormous numbers of people behind these kinds of disinfo network. The minute you have a bot army which is fully automated, there is no, well, in the end there is somebody who created the account and created the software what it actually does, because every bot has a different type of way of working. Um, and when the war started, this Chinese network started creating a lot more Russian propaganda aimed at Ukraine. So it went to a higher level. But we learned during a project for another client, which was, I can't tell the details, but it was a project in Asia that there was cooperation between Russia and China on this disinfo network type of influencing. So it's not a real surprise, and China is of course quite pro Russian.
I'm just interested how they cooperate. So, do they? Is it private initiatives or it's state-sponsored initiatives on the both sides to create, troll farms to attack EU elections? Do you have an idea?
It seemed to be really like like sort of government to government cooperation. What they were doing, and of course it helps Russia, but it might be. I I don't think that China will do something for free. It's quite famous. It's quite niche thing. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are not an expert on the Chinese disinfo accounts, but these accounts, the people behind these accounts are called the 50-cent army. So what it means is they have large buildings with a lot of people in it, and they have these disinfo accounts. They work for Chinese government, and they spread certain. It's not always propaganda for Chinese. Is it interesting that, for instance, they also spread tourism type of posts, like visit some city or area in China, or they're very proud that a Chinese woman went to space, for instance, or that they won some prize in Olympic Games, for instance. So it's not all not all of it is political, but I think it's quite possible that Russia pays a lot of money to get help from China in these networks.
Yes, I think they're just considering information as a war or as a business, and these are people who are just, the marketers or the postmen who are delivering the messages, the opinions, the information as the postman deliver it, and that's their logic. They don't see any problematic in this.
I would say it's
Uh,
quite ethically. It's not very good what they are doing. We also one interesting addition is that we also found that China used people in prisons. So some of these accounts stated that these people were inside some prison in China. They were complaining that the toilet was dirty, stuff like this. So apparently. It's also something that Chinese prisoners have can do, spread certain narratives and info on social media.
what about other social networks? Like, what is you're also analyzing Instagram, TikTok. What are the approaches there? Because on X, on Twitter, on Facebook, it's more about amplifying, how you amplify certain information, how you amplify certain articles or posts to make them visible, to make them, more kind of visible according to algorithms. What about other social networks? Is it the same? Is it the same approach of amplifying content?
Yeah, on TikTok is quite popular to spread this kind of propaganda. Um, we used to have really good software for Instagram, but the platform was changed so significantly that we at the moment we don't have the capability to analyze big data on Instagram. And on TikTok, but TikTok is quite heavy on this propaganda. The thing is that for this EU project, we also wanted to analyze TikTok, and we've seen activity of disinfo networks. But the because we found so many of these accounts on X, it took a lot longer to finish this project than we expected. So in the end, it was quite minimal what we managed to do, analyzing these same narratives on TikTok. But I hopefully will finish that. I will send you the results hopefully in the nearby future.
That's very, very interesting. So, what can be a response to that? Because it seems that we are going, in circles. Um, Many people are aware of this danger already. I hope that Russia is considering and China are considering information as a weapon, and therefore they're using troll armies. What to do with these troll armies? You are revealing them, so obviously for the platforms, the decision will be to close these networks, to close these accounts. You say that X is not really reacting. What about Meta? What about some other social networks? What can be? Can we change the legislation? Can we say that, well, it is a crime to use inauthentic behavior in that way, especially it is, at least it is illegal to organize people into, spreading inauthentic behavior? Or should the response be that, one person, one account? You cannot really manage several accounts, uh, and that's it. If you want to keep it anonymous, okay, it's up to you, but you cannot keep two anonymous accounts or 30 anonymous accounts. It all should be more or less, linked to your papers, to your passport, because there is a good argument for that, but it's a bad argument for that, because people would say that in authoritarian societies it's very tricky, because it means that basically the government can find you very, very quickly. What can be responses in your opinion?
I think nobody should be happy that there are huge networks pushing, for instance, even maybe not political. I don't like promoting of far right, and I think anybody who appreciates democracy would agree with me. But it goes a lot further. I mean, the moment that you have large networks pushing anti-vaccination narratives, that is a Russian invention, by the way, to start spreading disinfo concerning vaccinations on social media. As far as I know, it was definitely done by this internet research agency, maybe even before, because it's apparently a really good way to stress societies, to drive. It's always a topic. They always choose a topic which divides a society. So discussion of black people versus white people, racism, immigration is a typical topic. And we don't come near freedom of speech. I may not like what certain anonymous accounts spread, but if these are real people and they adhere to the rules of this social media platform, it's within legal limits, I would say. But the moment that some government can make hundreds of thousands of accounts and you can sway elections with this. I mean, if we look at this Cambridge Analytica, they did this micro targeting, right? On social media platforms. So they managed to get certain groups in the UK, for instance, during Brexit, to influence them and get them to vote for Brexit. If you look at the leaked presentations of this Cambridge Analytica, there are sheets in these presentations that say we are the people who made Brexit possible, or some line like this. And people underestimate this. And that this Cambridge Analytica is micro targeting. But if you have hundreds of thousands of accounts in France, I wouldn't call it micro targeting. I would call it macro targeting, because the whole population can see it. But because the moment that this troll farm makes something trending, yeah, then every person on this social media platform who looks at trending topics will see their post, and may actually be influenced by it. And some people try to spread that it doesn't matter how many accounts you have and what they spread. Nobody is influenced. It's simply not true. I mean, if you are on social media platform and you're always in some sort of bubble, I know all of this, but still, if everybody says around you like we have to vote for this guy, it works. It probably works better than when Coca-Cola is trying to push an ad like we should all drink Coca-Cola, because then it's like, yeah, of course you want us to drink Coca-Cola because you make more money then. But if it's seem like real people and they're all telling we should vote for some guy, I think it works a lot better. And this problem is heavily underestimated. I always ask people when I do a speech at a conference about disinfo. I always ask people, how many accounts did Facebook delete between 2007 and now? And people just don't know. But the answer is 27 billion. That's like 3-4 times the whole world population. And these are often these disinfo network accounts. So I think we all agree that we shouldn't want these networks, but social media platforms should do something to detect them and delete them. I mean, this social media platform, the whole idea behind it is that it's for real people and not huge networks pushing some kind of narrative or disinfo.
Exactly, exactly. And this is also a question about authentic democracy, authentic freedom of speech.
Yeah,
It cannot be a freedom of speech if it is, as you say, administered by the government and making fake, actually fake voices, fake citizens who do not exist. The dead souls, as Mykola Hohol, the famous Ukrainian writer writing in Russian,
yeah.
said two centuries ago. Thank you so much, Robert, for this conversation and for your report and for your work.
Thank you so much. All the best.
This was a podcast explaining Ukraine by UkraineWorld, a multilingual website about Ukraine. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I'm a Ukrainian philosopher, chief editor of UkraineWorld, and president of PEN Ukraine. My guest today was Robert van der Noordaa, a Dutch journalist and analyst, and the founder of the TrollRenix, an initiative aimed to uncover disinformation campaigns on social media. Let me remind you that you can support our work at patreon.com/UkraineWorld. You can also support our volunteer trips to the front lines at PayPal, ukraine.resisting@gmail.com. You can find these links in the description of this episode. Stay with us and stand with Ukraine.